My entire theory, everything the world would come to know me for, was almost traded for a single, solid patch of land. I begged them. I would have given up everything just to stop the world from spinning. That wasn't the voice of a failure. That was the private confession of Charles Darwin, a man who would go on to decode the very language of life itself. It leads us to a strange, unsettling question. How can a man on the verge of one of the greatest intellectual breakthroughs in human history be so utterly broken that his only goal is to quit? Stay with me, because the answer has nothing to do with genius, and everything to do with the secret weapon he discovered in his darkest hour. We all know the image, an old wise man with a magnificent white beard, Charles Darwin, the titan of biology, the author of On the Origin of Species, a name so monumental it feels less like a man and more like an institution. His work is the bedrock of modern biology, a testament to a revolutionary mindset. We celebrate his 5-year journey on the HMS Beagle as a grand adventure of discovery. But this is a lie. Or, at least, a beautifully curated highlight reel. The reality was far messier, far more painful, and infinitely more interesting. We are taught that Darwin had a eureka, a moment in the Galapagos, that he saw the finches, and a light bulb went off. Simple, clean, motivational. But that story robs us of the real lesson. It hides the profound truth of his process. So, let's discard the myth and ask the real cow hoi learn. What if Darwin's theory of evolution wasn't born from a moment of brilliant insight, but was instead an accidental byproduct of his desperate attempt to escape his own personal hell? What if the key to his genius wasn't in looking for big answers, but in finding a way to survive the crushing boredom and misery of each passing day? This is not a story about the birth of a theory. It's a story about the birth of a new philosophy for survival. Let's forget the beginning of the voyage. Forget the excited young naturalists setting sail from Plymouth. Let's go straight to the abyss. 2 years in. The year is 1833. The HMS Beagle is a cramped, floating prison, endlessly tossed by the Atlantic. For Charles Darwin, every single day is a nauseating nightmare. He is crippled by seasickness, not just a mild inconvenience, but a debilitating, soul-crushing illness. Headaches, constant vomiting, a perpetual state of vertigo. He spends days, sometimes weeks, confined to his hammock, unable to read, unable to write, unable to think. He is surrounded by rough sailors, isolated by his education and his misery. The grand adventure has become a monotonous, brutal loop of suffering. This is where he meets his true enemy. It wasn't the captain. It wasn't a rival scientist. Darwin's greatest enemy was an insidious force I call the tyranny of the grand narrative. The grand narrative is that voice in your head on any difficult journey. The one that whispers, "What have you accomplished? Where is your breakthrough?" This was supposed to be epic, but all you feel is sick and small. It was the pressure from his family, from his own ambition, to return with something significant. But out there, in the nauseating emptiness of the ocean, there was nothing significant. There was just the next wave. His most critical mistake? He believed that voice. He spent months trying to force a big discovery. He'd dissect a creature, frantically searching for a grand insight. He'd study geology, hoping for a single unifying theory to spring to mind. But the grand narrative mocked him. His findings were just notes, disconnected facts. He felt like a failure. The cost was immense. His health deteriorated. His spirit withered. He wrote in his journal about his wretched weakness, his despair. This wasn't a hero's journey. This was a slow, agonizing defeat. The pressure to find a why was destroying him. It was here he made the decision to try and quit, to abandon the voyage in Montevideo. He was ready to sacrifice his life's purpose for a moment of peace. This difficult period required immense mental fortitude. To stay hard when your body is giving up is a challenge few of us can comprehend. His journey was a testament to the power of human will, a raw display of stoic motivation. He didn't quit, as we know. The captain, Robert Fitzroy, convinced him to stay. But what Darwin learned in that moment of near surrender is the key. The conventional lesson here would be never give up, push through the pain, right? That's the typical motivational playbook. But Darwin's real lesson was far more subtle and powerful. It was the complete opposite. He learned that you don't conquer the storm by fighting it. You survive it by forgetting the storm exists. He learned, stop searching for the meaning and start documenting the details. He couldn't defeat his seasickness, and he couldn't satisfy the tyranny of the grand narrative. So he gave up on both. He abandoned the quest for a eureka moment. His goal was no longer to find the answer to life's great mysteries. His goal was simply to get through the next hour without going mad. And his only escape was to turn his attention to the most mundane, most insignificant, most boring things he could find. Now, let's rewind. Not to his birth, but to his passion. As a young man, Darwin wasn't a star student. He dropped out of medical school. To his father's great disappointment. His true love? Collecting beetles. Think about that. Not solving grand equations. Not debating philosophy. Collecting. Pinning tiny insects to a board. It seems like a childish hobby, but it was the forging of his unique superpower. A relentless obsession with tiny, seemingly meaningless variations. This wasn't about ambition. It was about pure, unadulterated curiosity. This was the foundation of his incredible discipline. Back on the Beagle, having abandoned the search for a grand theory, he reverted to this factory setting. He let his inner beetle collector take over. When they reached the Galapagos Islands, he wasn't thinking about the origin of species. He was thinking, this finch's beak is a bit thicker than that other one. Curious. Let me write that down. The shell of this tortoise from this island is shaped differently than the one from the next island. How odd. Let me sketch it. Note. Sketch. Label. Collect. No judgment, no theory, no pressure. Just pure, unadulterated observation. He was treating finches like he treated his beetles. He was documenting the world not as a theorist, but as a librarian of reality. This intense focus on yourself and your immediate task is a powerful tool for self-development. It provided the clarity he needed. But here's the soi roi cuiet diem, the flaw spotlight that makes him so real. Darwin's weakness was a crippling self-doubt and a fear of being wrong. This is why, even after the voyage, even after collecting all the evidence, he sat on his theory for over 20 years. He was terrified of the implications, terrified of the backlash. He was a master observer, but a hesitant revolutionary. His journey wasn't a sprint to the finish line. It was a slow, painful process of building the courage to believe his own eyes. This reminds us that even the greatest minds wrestle with the same demons we do. His path was a long and arduous healing journey. So how do we apply Darwin's accidental discovery to our own lives when we're facing our own seasickness, be it burnout, creative blocks, or overwhelming goals? We can extract a powerful, practical formula from his process. Let's call it the Finchbeak Method. It's a 3-step antidote to the tyranny of the grand narrative. First, shrink your focus. Forget the big goal. Forget writing the book or building the business. Focus on the smallest, most observable component. Not the book, but the next sentence. Not the business, but the next email. Find your Finchbeak, the one tiny, manageable detail you can document right now. This requires immense daily discipline. Second, observe without interpretation. Don't ask what it means, just ask what it is. Collect the data of your life without attaching a story to it. I made 5 sales calls today. Not, I'm a failure because only one person answered. By separating the data from the drama, you starve the grand narrative of its power. This is the core of an abundance mindset, seeing the wealth of data, not the poverty of results. Third, trust in the accumulation. Darwin didn't see the pattern in one day. The theory of evolution emerged slowly, painfully, from a mountain of disorganized notes after the journey. He trusted that if he collected enough tiny, boring facts, a pattern would eventually reveal itself. You must do the same. Trust that your daily, seemingly insignificant actions are building towards a breakthrough you can't yet see. It's the ultimate form of study motivation and personal development. Let's go back to where we started. To that desperate man, trapped in his hammock. My entire theory was almost traded for a single, solid patch of land. I would have given up everything, just to stop the world from spinning. We hear that now, and we don't hear a failure. We hear a profound truth. The breakthrough wasn't a thought that occurred to him. The breakthrough was the process he was forced to invent to survive his own mind and body. He had to stop trying to change the world and simply start observing it, one tiny detail at a time. The theory of evolution wasn't the goal. It was the consequence of a powerful survival mechanism. It was the result of a deep spiritual journey. His story teaches us that sometimes, the most motivational thing we can do is to stop trying to be motivated. It teaches us that when you feel lost in the storm, the answer isn't to look for the lighthouse on the horizon. It's to study the intricate patterns on a single drop of rain on your hand. Your purpose isn't found in a grand vision. It's forged in the quiet discipline of your daily actions. It's built from the mountain of Finchbeaks you choose to notice and document, while everyone else is waiting for a eureka moment that may never come. You must be grateful for the small, boring details, for they are the raw materials of genius. Be grateful for the struggle, for it is the crucible of clarity. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed, the next time the grand narrative tells you you're not doing enough, remember Darwin in his hammock. Take a breath, shrink your focus, and just count the finches. What's the most insignificant detail you've noticed today that could, in 20 years, change your world? Share your Finchbeak in the comments below. Your story matters. And if this resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about the messy, beautiful truth of success. There are no excuses on the path to self-development. You just have to want it. The question is, how bad do you want it?